It's never really a good thing to start a show with a story about Adolf Hitler, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you know your history, you'll know that Hitler married Eva Braun at midnight, April 29th, 1945, in the map room of his Berlin bunker. Less than 36 hours later, they'd both be dead and their bodies burned. Obviously, this did not give them much time to raise a family, and history records that Hitler left no heirs. Or did he? There's strong evidence that Hitler had a son, the product of a brief affair with a French teenager named Charlotte Labjoie, after the two of them got drunk in the town of Fons-en-Ypres in June of 1917. The boy's name was Jean-Marie Loret, and his mother never told him a thing about his father until she was about to die in the early 1950s. This was years after Jean-Marie had enlisted in the French army and had actually gone off to fight the Nazis. Imagine having to keep that kind of a secret from your child. And when Jean-Marie learned of his ancestry, it kind of freaked him out. It took him until the 1970s for him to really come to terms with the possibility, which is when he began to investigate things very, very intensely. All the conclusions came back the same. Yep, you are most probably Hitler's son. In 1981, he published a book called Your Father's Name Was Hitler, and it caused something of a sensation in Europe, but Jean-Marie died 4 years later at the age of 67, still unable to prove what his mother had told him. However, other people have taken up the challenge. It was discovered that although Hitler never acknowledged the baby, he did send Charlotte Labjoie money, fat envelopes of the stuff delivered by Nazi officers during the occupation of France. Paintings signed Adolf Hitler were found in Labjoie's attic, and someone discovered a picture of a woman painted by Hitler that looks an awful lot like Charlotte Labjoie. But is there anything other to this mystery than the historical significance of there being a son of Hitler? Well, actually, yes. Jean-Marie Loret had children. They might be entitled to royalties from the sale of Hitler's book, Mein Kampf. So, there's a little secret from Nazi Germany. Now let's get a little lighter. These are some secrets about rock.
This is The Secret History of Rock with Alan Cross.
Hello again, I'm Alan Cross, and this is when we get together to dig up some dirt on music. Okay, so not all of it is going to rival that story about Hitler's alleged son, but there's some really good stuff coming up. What happens when you can't be a rock star anymore? What do you do next? We'll look at some interesting career changes. This is a story that never goes away. People who make copies of songs and albums, and the people who hate when that happens. We'll look at the kind of alt-rock that we got in 1976. And to begin, some people who died. I know, some really cheery stuff. Usually, when we talk about the death of rock stars, it involves drug overdoses, choking on vomit after a drinking binge, or maybe some kind of suicide. And frankly, that's often the case. Others die from common health-related causes, heart attacks, cancer, that kind of thing. But I want to talk about people who died under different circumstances. Take the case of Ricky Wilson of the B-52s. He was a founding member of the band in late 1976 with his sister Cindy. The band's first gig was a 1977 Valentine's Day party. The group was an immediate hit with the new wave crowd. They had this surf rock sort of sound, which was made possible by the strange way Ricky tuned his Mosrite guitar. See, instead of 6 strings, he only bothered to string his guitar with 4. The third and fourth strings were superfluous. All his tunings were open, and he says he never bothered to write down what he was using to tune his guitar from song to song. I have no idea how the tunings go, he'd say. He was totally self-taught, so there was no one to tell him that he was doing it wrong. And those technical mistakes are a huge part of the B-52's distinctive sound. Sometime in 1983, Ricky began to feel unwell. He tried to ignore it for a while, but he felt progressively worse. And by the time the band was recording their Bouncing Off Satellites album in 1985, he couldn't keep it a secret any longer. He just didn't want anybody to make a fuss. But the fact was that Ricky was sick, very sick. And on October the 12th, 1985, he died. And at age 32, he became one of the first high-profile celebrities, and perhaps the very first musician, to die of this new disease called AIDS.